Yesterday, the Bank of England said that if we leave the European Union without a deal, the value of the pound would plummet and the UK would be thrown into a recession worse than the one caused by the financial crisis of 2008, which, by the way, the bank didn't see coming. Here's the governor himself, Mark Carney.
By the end of 2023, GDP is more than 10% lower in the disorderly scenario compared to that May 2016 trend. Despite this sharp contraction in GDP, something that's bigger than happened during the financial crisis, unemployment rises to 7.5%, less than during the financial crisis. The sharp fall in sterling, alongside with the imposition of tariffs, pushes up the cost of imports, and overall CPI inflation peaks at 6.6%.
Now, if you were watching the news last night, your ears might have pricked up at one of Mr. Carney's statistics in particular. He said house prices could fall by 30% in the event of no deal. That's big news if you own a house or you're looking to buy a house. Mr. Carney was keen to stress that this estimate is very much a worst-case scenario. So let's hear this.
We've constructed a sort of worst-case, no deal, no transition Brexit scenario where you have a series of events which include frictions at the border, difficulties at ports, sharp moves in financial markets so that it costs much more for people to borrow and businesses to borrow, a series of events that all happen at the same time.
House prices going off a cliff is the absolute worst-case scenario, but is Brexit already having an impact on the housing market where you are? Is it stalling because people are waiting to see what will happen with Brexit before they buy or sell? Many will be hoping for a dip in house prices, so if they hear a prediction, they think, OK, I'll hold off buying. They see this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get on the housing ladder. Are you somebody who actually says, look, we need I'm trying to avoid the word crash, a serious, precipitous drop? So you tell us what you think. 08000 288 291. Email vine@bbc.co.uk. We're joined by Henry Pryor, housing expert and estate agent, and Ruben Young, who's director of a group called PricedOut, which is campaigning for affordable housing. He himself is stuck in a multiple rental situation like so many young people. Henry, first of all, it was pretty doom-laden, some of that stuff, wasn't it?
Well, there was an element of it, but I do think that the governor requires a little bit of credit. Remember, he himself said that it's not the Bank of England's job to hope for the best, it's their job to plan for the worst. And he was at pains to explain and to reaffirm in his interviews he's done on radio and TV this morning that the bank are not predicting that house prices will crash. He is just saying that, as many people in the industry already are aware, house prices are not predicated directly on supply and demand. And indeed, Jeremy, as you and I spoke about this subject ahead of the referendum 2 years ago, house prices are based upon the availability and cost of credit. As the governor said in the clip you just played, credit they expect will get harder. The availability, that opportunity for people to be able to borrow money in the first place is going to get harder. And indeed, the numbers that we've had out this morning from the ONS confirm that they are already getting harder to get hold of. And that's one of the reasons why prices in some parts of the country are softening.
I see. Now, Ruben Young, that's a difficult one for you, isn't it? Because I'm assuming you want a crash, but you don't want credit to get harder to get, because then you can't borrow to buy. Is that right?
Well, no, not quite, actually. I think Henry's right that credit determines prices in a great way. I wouldn't say it's not about supply and demand, because credit is, of course, one aspect of demand. We want to see more homes built so that house prices can stop rising and wages can catch up. The problem with a house price crash in the event of Brexit is it might come alongside a fall in wages and living standards, so we shouldn't celebrate too quickly.
Yeah, well, exactly. So if you have that terrible event happens in the housing market, it doesn't help you as much as it might do if you just had ready cash to buy.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay, so what do you actually want to happen here? You just want more houses being built? It's going to take a while.
Yes. That's a long.
What age are you, if I may ask?
I'm 26.
Okay, so you might wait 20 years for that to take effect in the market.
There's absolutely no doubt that building homes is a long-term solution, but every year we fail to build 300,000 homes is another year that it's going to take us to climb out of this crisis.
Okay, Henry, thoughts on that?
Well, Ruben and people like Ruben have done a fantastic job to draw everyone's attention, not least of all the people in Westminster who are charged with doing this. We elect them every 5 years or more frequently, as it turned out this year, to try and deal with these things. We all know the governor and others are all able to explain what is going on and some of the solutions to it. We've got so many different housing crises across the country. Building homes will help for some people and ease the pressure for an awful lot of people. But if we remember that we're talking to people across the whole of these United Kingdom, when we talk about house prices falling, we tend to talk about that from the privileged position of sitting in the southeast, where house prices indeed have risen since the credit crunch of 10 years ago. But Jeremy, remember, if you're listening to this in Northern Ireland, house prices today are still half what they were.
Is that right?
Half what they were. But,
They had a crazy... They doubled just before the crash, didn't they?
So they've come back. They're still half what they were in 2007. And we have to remember, from the BBC research that was done this time last year, once you factor in inflation, 53% of the country's housing stock is worth less than it was a decade ago. So this idea that if we were to see a huge or significant fall in house prices, even if the worst case scenario were to come to pass, that this is not necessarily going to make it better for everyone. And indeed, we have to remember that whilst, again, most of us out there in the real world understand that whatever the Brexit decision, there was going to be pain, whether we stayed in, as it turns out, the majority just of the population decided that the pain of staying in the EU was too much to bear. Coming out is going to be painful for some people, but that pain, most people have worked out, according to the referendum result anyway, was a price worth paying.
Could the government, aside from building houses, could the government do anything else, Ruben? I'm just thinking about the idea sometimes put around is to try to get older people to move out of their houses quickly.
Absolutely. I think that part of it is using our existing housing stock better. And the way to do that is by changing a disastrously regressive property tax system. At the moment, people in the most expensive homes pay less than 0.1% a year in council tax, whereas in the cheaper homes, they pay about 1.5%. And at the same time, you have aspiring first-time buyers forking out a lot of money in stamp duty, although that's, with a lot of properties, come to an end now.
I suppose what might happen is people might start thinking, oh, this Brexit is coming off the rails. I don't even know if Theresa May is going to get her deal through Parliament. You might start thinking, if you've got a house, to put it on the market now before a precipitous drop. Now, surely that's good. That's it working in your favour, right?
Yes, although exactly that is probably what will trigger the precipitous drop.
I suppose that's true, Henry, isn't it?
If we get an excess of supply, then that will disrupt the market. What all politicians and all of those involved in the industry would like is some stability and an end to this idea that ever-rising house prices is something that nationally we should celebrate. What we want are homes for people to live in, to be able to buy, to be able to rent. And the people in Westminster are the people who are tasked with doing that. We've had 14 housing ministers since 2000. We need some stability in Westminster in order to be able to provide some stability in housing.
Thank you very much indeed. Henry Pryor, housing expert and estate agent, and Ruben Young, who's director of PricedOut. Love your thoughts on what's happening in your area. 08000 288 291. Are housing prices already starting to go down because of Brexit?